Real Talk with Carl and Charlene. Real talk for the real world. Let's get it. Real Talk with Carl and Charlene. Real talk for the real world. Let's get it.
Good morning. Welcome to another fly edition of Real Talk with Carl and Charlene. We hope your holiday weekend was phenomenal. Mine was the same. Got a lot of rest, relaxation, and I hope you did the same as well. We thank y'all that's tuning in for us live. Please drop in the comments where you tuning in from. Right into them. And for those of you who are joining us on hashtag replay, we want you also to drop in the comments where you're tuning in from. Let us know your perspective. Let us know what you think about the show. What the topic we're talking about today. Get involved. Drop your perspective in, and we want to hear from you. We appreciate you guys showing up, and we love that you guys come by and support us 100. But I can't do this by myself. I got my hostess with the mostest is joining me as she always does, the lovely Charlene Brown. Come here, Charlene. What's up?
On. What's up? What's up?
What's going on? What's going on? What it be like? What it be like weekend? Weekend talk. Weekend holiday.
Yeah, it was a long weekend. It was nice. I got to see some friends yesterday, so it was good. Met some new folks, so it was a nice weekend. And what about
Okay.
you? I know you was on vacation running around.
Yeah, I was on vacation, spend some time with family, just relax. Like I put in my text, I reset, relax, recharge. Feel a whole different way, a little energetic. Took some perspective and some introspective to some things that's going on, some things that's happening, some stuff that I want to move forward with on this other side of this, because we on the other
Hmm.
side of 2020 now. The first half is going, trying to look on the first half and see what I accomplished in the goal wise, what I put in writing that I actually was able to check that off. And what better way to do that down there in OC Maryland, listening to the water, family eating crabs, that kind of thing. So yeah, had a good time. So I'm ready to get back into it now. It's business time now. It's business time. Let's roll.
Yes, well, let's just make sure that we talk about our sponsors and thank them.
Yes.
And our first sponsor, if you haven't gotten your book yet, make sure you get your book, The Black Toolbox by our friend Martin Pratt. He's always about education and helping you uplift yourself. So make sure that you connect and get that book. Head on over to theblacktoolbox.com. And of course, our other sponsor, Russ and Scott, they are amazing and they have a mastermind going on. So be a part of the group, be a part of a group that helps you. They speak with you instead of at you. And you can head on to russhedge.com/ business dash mastermind and make sure that you're part of that. And of course, you know how Carl and I do. We have our own uh, services. So if you ever need help with what we can help you with and support you with, for me, is Struggle Site Rescue. If you guys need that help with your website, you're not sure about it, you're frustrated, you need alignment, I can help you get your strategy together so you know how to use your website instead of just letting it sit there. You can text me, Brand Misfit VIP at 74121, and Carl, let the folks know how they can connect with you and get more help and support.
Yes, absolutely. As always, is are you ready to be transformed? It's 4 week intensive vulnerability transformation program. It's a guide to the C-suite leadership and leadership in general. And 4 weeks, we just hit it with the 4 steps. We work through them, walk through them, see where you are, see how we can develop, and we'll correlate a plan that'll move you into being transformed. Transform leader to be a leader that transforms that other leaders want to follow. So go to carlshawnwatkins.com/VTP, sign up, and let's get it started. I know you're ready to be transformed.
Yes, yes. And speaking of that, we trying to transform this HR conversation because a lot of times
Absolutely.
people are unsure what to do with HR, how to speak to HR, if you even have an HR to speak to. For me, I have a problem with the human being removed from human resources. I'm talking to a bunch of or properly set up bots that cannot answer none of my questions. They send me to the pit of hell, and then I just don't want to deal with HR either. So we have somebody to help us make it through, and we're gonna let her introduce herself. Tiffany, I got introduced to her through Carl, because that's what Carl does. Carl is a connector. So I've been introduced to her. So I'm gonna learn more about her skill set, and of course, the power that she does helping us get ourselves ready, especially as small business owners, or if we're in the corporate life of HR. This is someone that you guys should be connecting with. Make sure you're listening, getting the nuggets that she's dropping, and of course, connecting with her. And we're going to bring her on so we can start this conversation, because I really need to understand what's going on with these bots.
What's up, Tiff? What's up?
Thank you for having me. What a great way to spend after a holiday weekend.
Yes, yes,
Cute.
yes,
A
yes,
little.
yes. People don't know I've
So
been knowing
tell the
Tiffany
folks about.
for a while. I've been knowing Tiffany for a while. We've been in the radar since about the beginning of the pandemic, I think. So it's been a little bit. We've been knowing each other. I remember I was trying to get her for this super talking about HR. I had this super HR panel together with about 10 experts. And Tiffany, I think you had a client or something that I don't think I could have put you on there, but I said I was gonna come back to you and put something together. And here we are, like almost 2 years later, right? Still going through it. She got a lot of things. Genuine hard person. Really, really genuine. We've had quite a few talks on the Zooms and offers, and we share a lot of things in common. So it wasn't hard for me and Tiffany to hit it off. We share a lot of things. But Tiff, I ain't gonna take up all the time talking about you. You tell them about you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very kind of you to say. I do pride myself on empathy and vulnerability and authenticity, which is why we connected and why I'm so grateful to chat with you all today. So, I'm Tiffany Castagno, and I'm CEO and founder of Sepher LLC. Sepher is an acronym for Cultivating the Evolution of Professional HR, because we don't want to be in the pit of hell. That makes me so sad and breaks my HR heart every time I hear that. But the reality is that's what it is. So, at times for people. So we have to bring this human element back into work. That's how I approach it. I have co-created conversations with my clients who are small to medium businesses, helping them build the infrastructure so they can connect with their employees, so that they have better tools and systems to be able to support them in empathy, show up as the leaders, Carl Shawn, as you talked about in the beginning, and be somebody that you want to follow. So building their brands, building their culture, and everything that lies in between. Even when it gets messy, even when it gets ugly, we're not avoiding conversations, but we're going to treat people like humans. And we're going to be equitable in our workplaces. And that's the stuff that lights me up every single day.
I'm glad you said that. Treat people like humans, because a lot of times we're being treated like numbers, or just entities that should be just moved around and dismissed and things like that. And of course, with the DEI space, everybody's always saying, they say the words, but then the actions never follow through. And that usually falls on HR to kind of flush out the confusion. But I don't see that. I see more confusion, more emails, and then when they send out the emails, they tell you, oh, they had a conversation with you, but then they're changing so much. And I mean, I missed the time where we used to have town halls, or HR would actually have lead the charge of these conversations to explain what the changes were, what we should expect, and then HR kind of did the legwork. So if there were taxes that were going to be changed, because some companies actually shift their employees from state to state, HR handled a lot of that. They would just say, hey, just let us know what you want to do. We can walk you through the process. Now it's just like, oh, go check out our blog. And I'm like, what?
It's not what blogs are designed for.
So how can we do better? How can HR do better in that instance of bringing back that human element of learning how to explain things to people, because it feels like the way that technology departments went, where everybody literally knows just the bare minimum and the surface responses. Everything else is like, oh, you guys, here's a link to go figure it out yourself, kind of thing. What how can we reverse that for HR? Because that's definitely not a place we want people confused.
I think that's such an important question, and as HR has made its evolution, because we've been tasked with so much from the tactical to the strategic and everything in between, and because to be fair, a lot has been shoved in our corner. You're responsible for DEI, you're responsible for helping out navigate these payroll issues, employee relations, all change management. When you talked about that piece and how just go to the blog or these taxes are happening or this is happening, there's a whole element to change management, which includes sharing what is going on. It's not just blasting out emails, it's really making sure there's either a town hall, there's an order of operations to how we do change, who's informed when, how are they informed, where are they informed, what's the right cadence. There's so much that goes into that. And sometimes we forget about that with humans. But I think in this evolution with HR to try to streamline, to embrace technology, because that is the wave of the future, what also happens is that in trying to trim some of that fat or some of these administrative tasks, we've carved out different things with different pieces to try to give that to HR. So maybe we have some sort of operations team, HR operations, to handle that. And employees tend to feel like, hey, well, wait a minute, how come I don't get a person to talk to you? Give me a hotline. There's no human behind that. And so that's naturally going to make people feel that way. But if you haven't rolled it out appropriately and you didn't prepare people for the change, that's how we end up there. But there also, I mean, we've all probably seen this. My husband was complaining the other day, like, you can never get to a person. And so even in our personal lives, we're frustrated by that. And now we come to work and it's the same thing. So you still have to have this balance of having a human, having someone, even if we streamline and automate that. I'm trying to figure that out myself as a small business owner. How do I do that and pull myself out of different elements of the business while still serving my human clients? And so it is a challenge, but I think it's going to be different for every business, but we can't just strip out that humanity. You have to leave a space for questions and curiosity too. And sometimes that's a missing piece of the puzzle. But we have been, I shared in my post, 98% of HR people are burned out because we now taking on COVID duty. We never signed up for that, but here we are serving. We are a service profession. So there's so much, it's so complicated.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I
Yeah.
think the automation part is missing. Like it's not missing; it's just not being rolled out appropriately.
And I got
Carl,
it
I
to
don't want to say something.
since we on the automation and just call me old school, right? I know the arm of I know the arm of innovation has to move forward, right? But a lot of this stuff that's being shelved to people and moving forward to people is not being taught to people. So, in essence of that, we're dependent on people with these different levels of understanding, receiving information, taking information in, and we're telling them, okay, we're putting one standard system in place for all of you guys to go have at it. The biggest thing that I missed as far as the HR, the connection was that piece, regardless of whatever that HR person looked like, they was fortified enough to walk you through starting a job. They was fortified enough to walk you through insurance paperwork. They were fortified enough, they were fortified enough to get you through that. And regardless of your level of intelligence and whether it was your first job or whether you was executive changing the job. But now you have this automated systems that's set in place. And I'm not talking badly about it. I'm just highlighting problems with it. Of course, it moves the needle. Of course, McDonald's was made on the automation. Slide the sandwich down, let different people put on different things. You have a complete burger at the end, right? But the missing piece in that, there were expertise people in those positions. So if you was an expert ketchup dude, you knew to put the three dots and move it forward, right? So now I'm just giving it to you where y'all can see it. Now I'm looking at the point of now you've given me an automated thing and say, okay, log in here. Here's your password and username. Okay, I done logged in here. Now I'm going in. Now you're forcing me to do things, and not to necessarily say that we shouldn't, because we should read what we're signing and clicking. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is that you have these different levels of understanding and receiving and taking in information. And now you have people with confusion and questions. And I called yesterday to try to make a call. I'm not gonna put this company on blast because I'm so hot. I called yesterday to try to straighten out some things over this past weekend with this company. And I know it was a holiday, but I called Thursday beginning, and I got automation after automation, push button after push button, number to go to after number to go to. And then I got all the way to the end, and they told me we closed for the holiday. Now you talking about a hot brother that been on the phone for an hour of pushing buttons. Oh, Eileen, so this,
I'm waiting
I ain't
for
want
them
to
that
go.
I'm waiting for them to add to the prompt, press 0 for Satan and press star to just get out of all this drama. Because it's like, who would set something up so convoluted? And it's almost like they don't want you to stick around. They don't want you to reach somebody, a human, with answers because they don't have no answers. That's how I feel. But go on, Carl. Go on, Carl.
No, I don't want this to be a rant because I do want us to know. I titled it, we put it, Can HR be reformed? But I titled it, Tiffany, to kind of piggyback off your book about changing the stripes and what we know HR to be and what it has been. To some people, it's been, just as horrible as IT. Because if you work on any kind of corporate, you don't want food IT. They think they got, they cut you off, password don't work, you at their whim. In some places, HR is like that as well. If you don't get that, but what about my sick day? Yo, my vacation day. I just want vacation. I ain't get my check. Oh, you gotta wait till next payroll. So I know I'm talking some things that people have experienced, right? So Rob got a good question in. And I wanted to jump from my diatribe to the question that he had. And Rob said, what do you think is the cause of the current HR woes? We'll just stay with this. And I'll just move it back current, meaning I'll just go this pandemic phase because we're not gonna fool with what HR was doing back then because we're in a whole new HR bucket. No, we can't even pull that. We can't even pull that caboose with us. This is a whole new HR bucket since the pandemic has hit the world. So, what are some of the woes that you think is really really plaguing the HR right now?
Yeah, Robert is just always having. I see all these comments flying in.
He asked the
Chiming in.
right
Yeah,
questions.
that's yes, powerful questions. I appreciate it. I think I was just having a conversation with a client, and I think part of it is we don't equip our leaders with the appropriate tools and resources, so they feel ill-equipped to deal with all of these things. They're not sure what they're supposed to be doing in terms of supporting their teams. All of this pandemic stuff came flying at all of us, and we're just like, whoa, what are we doing? And you have people who are people leaders, but they don't even have the tools to do so. They haven't been appropriately mentored. They have no idea what's going on. They don't maybe trust HR. Their boss might be telling them not to trust HR, or things just aren't rolled out appropriately. And so that's a lot of it. I think we're missing that empathy and the vulnerability in the workplace. It's slowly starting to turn around, but that has been like, let's just roll into this meeting just how we're supposed to. Here's the agenda. Nope, everybody wants to rush. We don't want to take the pauses as a business because now we might lose some money, or we just don't have time for this. You have to, just saw the press 0 for Satan pop up. We have to take those pauses, and they have to be deliberate. If you want to set a culture, you have to do so intentionally. But I think a lot of people, a lot of companies aren't set up. We're not listening to our customers and the feedback they have. If you're not pouring into your team, how are they going to take care of your customers? They're not. That's just bottom line. And I think, to Robert's question, that's why we're seeing a lot of the woes. We also are putting so much, as I said earlier, on these HR folks that they're burned out. You can't have a team that's burned out trying to support other folks who are burned out. It's a whole nother epidemic in there. And so that's a lot of what we're seeing. So we have to be able to support each other. And we talked about, it's important to be flexible too. So, and adaptable. And some companies are like, we're just going to keep on doing what we're doing. Come on back to this office. We're not going to change policies to adapt to these times. And that's problematic as well.
And Rob threw in it also the authority too, in which I've always found that to be an issue in HR. They do give you a lot. Yeah, Felicia talking about it too. It's an overload. I never really knew, when you hear the term HR, it's so vast, right? But you never really understand until you have an issue with HR, because most of the time when you go on jobs and you start the process, there's a smoothness there. Like you don't have any problems going in HR. Maybe it's a medical thing you didn't know your insurance covered. You need them to kind of explain that to you. And I
Mhm.
know when I started, like my last corporate starting job, we had those not necessarily huddles, but we had those meetings. Like we had the financial people when we was doing the 401k. They came out and they had a little mini seminar. They kind of like walked us through and answered questions. They offered those to us. And we had the insurance people come out and they kind of went over some of the programs and some of the plans, the HOPs and the PPOs and all of those kind of things, right? They kind of went out that the last couple of positions I started, I didn't have that. Like I got a lot of paperwork that I clicked and DocuSign and then, put that back in. And then I was to show up at this post at this time. But all things being considered, you never really realize how much is on HR to do so many things and to not be able to have the authority. What I'm jumping on what Rob said, to not only to not have the authority to make changes, because I think it should be in that process of where you can make changes based upon what you do and how efficient that makes your job, and then that should be sent up to management to sign off on. That's how I think that should go. Not management saying, "Okay, we'll put y'all like this and you work it out." And I think that's what some of the things that maybe we're starting to see change now with this post pandemic kind of thing going on with HR, where they're trying to get more. And a lot of these people are not really coming to the toe with the vulnerability piece. I'll speak on that on another time, but they're not really coming to, because a lot of people are shelving behind the part of, okay, changes are being made, but you guys got to be patient. You guys got to be understanding. You guys got to be, because they wasn't ahead of this. Nobody was. So now with this being that big problem like that, do you see what are some of the major things you see as pushes of concern and also solution?
Yeah. And what you touched on is a huge one. I am working a lot with clients on this shift from let's have you DocuSign and click all the things. Of course, we have to have all that to
You're
have
right.
the organization be in compliance, to make sure people are where they need to be. But it's not just that. It's just like DEI. If you just like pencil whip it, check the box, that's not a good experience. We're talking about creating experiences when we're talking about building deliberate cultures. And if we're not doing it that way, then it is check the box. And that's how you make people feel. How do you want people to experience you as a leader, as an organization? And so onboarding has been a huge piece. People are creating these things if they've never had them before. They are enhancing them. Like, I love that I'm seeing people start to be like, here's what we learned in the pandemic. We thought we knew our teams, but maybe we didn't. Now we've gotten some new information, some new data. So let's enhance what we have. And I'm like, yes, I'm here for that all day. I will help you with that all day. And so it's difficult to engage your team and to retain them. And you shouldn't, I'm going to say this, I share bold views all the time. You should not expect to have an engaged team or for folks to stay with you. There's a reason the great resignation is here. If you're not doing the things up front to welcome people in, if you're making Carl Shawn and Charlene sign these papers online, and that's the only connection I have with you, and you haven't, I call you and nobody's answering the phone, nobody responds to my email, there's no follow-up, that yes, information flow is key. We have to be able to have that. And so I'm seeing people do that. Succession planning has been huge. And I'm loving seeing that trend. There is a long way to go, don't get me wrong. But looking at who is the talent we have now, what talent, where's the gap in the talents we don't have, and how do we nurture this current state that we have, this current team, celebrate that, and move this organization forward. That's a huge one. Salary and benchmarking. Our team is doing so much work around that right now, but I love seeing this hard work that these leaders and organizations are putting in to make sure people are equitable, that their salaries are equitable, that their processes are equitable. Are these the right tools? We have 8,000 of them and none of them talk to each other. That creates a negative experience for people. So and please, for the love of God, and I am a Christian, if you are putting in place processes and engagement surveys, do something with the data. Don't just, otherwise people are going to eye roll and be like, what are you asking me these questions for? You ain't going to do anything with it. Why am I taking this? You're taking my time. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. I could go on forever.
Oh no,
Those
no,
are
we need that. We need that soapbox. We need
Yeah,
that soapbox, detergent box, washing machine
because
box. We need all of that.
I love because I loved where I used to know my HR team. Like it wouldn't be just one person that I would always go to, because if that one person was busy, they would always say, "Oh, you know what? Reach out to so and so. They can meet up with you." And we had meetings, like, that was something that I loved. So I feel like that's even missing. Where, yeah, you may want to have an HR person for a team, but then allow that person to say, or maybe that person should be saying, you know what? You may have more questions about the new rollout. Let's set up a meeting. Let's sit down and talk. It's like that's not even um I want to say that's not even an offer. It's like, hit me up in chat. I'm like, I don't want to hit you up in chat because I
That's
can't type.
the
Right, like my thoughts are coming and flowing faster than I can type it all out. So I want to be able to do that and sit down with somebody and have a conversation. So I see some questions coming in, and I don't want us to miss them. We had a question earlier from Andrea. She's asking, do you have any suggestions on how to pour into your team?
Oh, Andrea, hey, I see it's lots of people out here in chat. I just love all your faces. I think, for one, we have to listen. So active listening is a core value that I have in its effort, as is empathy. We have to be able to understand, to meet people where they're at, to not rush into meetings with our preset agenda if something's going on in the world. When with all that is happening out there, they're not even going to be productive if you're asking them, let's talk about last month's, let's talk about the quarterly financials. And I just been crying before I came to work because I got a personal situation where people are out here being killed in the street. It's not that we just need to push an agenda. And we should have learned that way back at the beginning of pandemic, but I see that we haven't. So really listening, connecting, like you said, Charlene, into having a cadence, meet with your team weekly, pull aside separate time for folks if they need it individually. Everybody's going through something at any given time. And so we have to be prepared for that. We also have to be prepared for, if you ask me how I'm doing and I say I'm not okay, or I burst into tears, like, don't just ask me performatively just to ask because it's the right thing to do. Ask me because you care about me as a person and because you really want to. I might not have all the answers. Also, don't lie. And be able to give your time. Accessibility and visibility are two huge things. I see it all the time in engagement scores that it's one of the lowest scoring items because people don't see their leaders. They don't feel like they can access them. You don't have to be available 24/7. We all need balance, but you have to be there for your team and they have to feel like they can trust you and that if they do come to you, that you're going to help them. So that's, those are a lot of the key components and certainly making sure they have the tools to do their job.
Yes, love that. And another
Yeah.
question with Rob is there a way to incorporate automation while still keeping the human element? And I know I've seen that with other processes, but that's a great question, especially for HR. Is there, so what's your thoughts on that?
I think that is a super powerful question. And it's one we all need to be considering, HR, leaders, everyone working in an organization. And as individual contributors, you should be challenging your leadership teams and your organizations to do this and share your ideas so that they know what that experience is like on the other side. So even for myself, when I'm I test things on the back end. You have to do that because I want to know, what is my client going to experience if I do automate something or I do something, maybe it doesn't come out as I intended. You also have to ask people for feedback. So that's definitely a key piece of it too. So you want to test it. You can have focus groups or different types of stakeholders in the game so that they have buy-in and you know how it's going to impact them. I can make decisions all day, but if I don't know how it's going to impact another thing, you don't have all the data and the information. That's where you should start. You should be in an information gathering stage and then repeat that and follow up with what you learned so that you can always be improving. And certainly have those spaces for people to ask questions. You don't want to just roll something out and be like, here you go, click that link like we were talking about. Well, what if the link doesn't work? It's broken. Now nobody's on the phone to take me there, or now I have to wait. And I've seen this, and I, as an HR person, I have lit some people up for this within the department and our adjacent partners, because you can't just be like, that's somebody's livelihood. Don't tell me wait till next week. I just had this conversation 2 weeks ago for my check. I have kids to feed. I don't personally, but people have things going on in their lives. And how would you like it if somebody told you something that impacted your life and just was that dismissive about it? Too bad. You're just going to have to wait. That is not service. And that is not, and then you wonder why people are mad. And I embrace it fully when people get frustrated with HR. I wish it wasn't that way, but we have to own that as a profession. And not all of us are that type of HR to be able to move it forward.
Yeah, because
And
I
I think
remember when people when oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just thinking of that and reading some of the comments as well. Faith-based workplaces, some of the HR people work for the company, but don't work for the people, and that's been so. It's been so unassuming because HR has always been to some points and places, like I pointed out earlier, just different pieces where there's mistakes, right? So it wasn't sensitivity, high level of highlighting on HR them being them. But now when we've grown across all of these problems, is which the pandemic has now put upon the plate of, and then in concern of those that are not being retained by these companies. Now there's this push, which is always, I mean, it's always the case. Catastrophes push prayer, right? Bad things push good things to happen. This is how we been. 9/11 company, everybody was a prayer warrior. A few years after that, now nobody know nobody's name no more. So, these are the places that we come from in our society. Now, this being the case, yeah, there's a lot of highlighting on. Even the DEI structure has taken some deviations to betterment because oh okay, I can't just check the box. Well, you knew that when you got the box, but now there's this things that's pushing you out of this element of okay, I can sit behind the door with my name on it and nobody will knock. But now that door's gone. People have knocked the doors down, and it's a clean sweep throughout. I can see your office from my office, so now you got to deal with me. With them doing this and this being a presence now on the HR field, do you think it's a good field for people to go into now that a lot of people have been through some things as far as the great resignation, as far as changing their mindset of how the pandemic has really affected them, how they have thought different of themselves since the pandemic? Because we didn't give ourselves, and I'm just throwing this out blanketly, I don't think we gave ourselves enough credit and validation in what we were actually providing for corporate before this time. And I think now, well, I won't say we didn't give ourselves. We didn't stand on that. I think this great resignation was the stand needed that corporate has seen. And with you seeing that, do you think it's a good time now for people to actually go into the HR field that wants to make differences like you're trying to do?
I welcome all. Like I love to mentor people. I love to talk to my colleagues, and you have to be out there talking to your stakeholders. I consider my colleagues my stakeholders. I need to know what they're facing. They need to know what I'm facing. We are in this together, and community is another value that I have. There, we get nowhere alone. Together is better. I always say that because we would not have made it, especially as an HR profession, through this pandemic with all the stuff that flew at us, that still is, that we're expected to do without each other. And so that is a key component of this. I would love to welcome anybody into HR. I saw some comments in there that, people were told they had to be the enforcers of the rules. And that, my friends, that's HR of the past. That is not where we're going. It should be a collaborative approach, human-centered, people first. And so we have to be able to move away from that. It's challenging. I'm not going to lie. It's a difficult time. I've been in HR 14 years, and I will say that this is the hardest time that I have been in HR. I don't sugarcoat things, and I think that it's important that people know that, but it's an exciting time. And it's an exciting time because we're at the forefront of change, real rapid change, and sometimes it moves slower in some places than others, but things that are just the challenges, the opportunities that you have to make a difference with your stakeholders, with community, to turn things around from these negative perceptions that people have about HR. I love being the person that people trust and that they come to. And I'm grateful that I've always had that, because people need to see that we are just checking boxes. We're not just behind some little door, making policies and procedures like little dancing sprites. That's not what this is about. But yet, if that's the experience you've had, and this is how I got into HR, because I had negative experiences, I'm like, people deserve better in the workplace. if you see only that, that's what you're going to think it is. So I am all about having and welcoming other folks in who can change the brand of HR. We are all walking brands. And I think it's important that people know what HR really is. There's so many different functions of HR, and different ways you can practice. I am the HR of the future. I will be so bold as to say that. If folks are telling you that we're only enforcing policies, we're looking to only hire people or fire people, you should be wary of those folks because they ain't practicing right. Let me have a conversation with them. Because I was taught that way back in the beginning too, and I chose a different path. I'm going to say that.
Oh man, you brought me back. Brought me back to Malcolm with that right there. I am Malcolm X. She's like, I am HR.
Yes,
I
love it.
am HR. I am. It brought me back to to one of my favorite movies there, Malcolm X. For those who ain't seen, for those who ain't seen it, those who listen to the podcast, at the end, you have a bunch of different diversities of people, and they all say that they are Malcolm X. So I just want to paint that picture for you guys. Um, with that, I'm glad that you mentioned that piece of. I'm gonna throw this back to Charlene because I know I interrupted her earlier with a question that she was a statement she wanted to make. Uh, with what you're saying now with HR, and I think that from what I understand, there's been an emboldenedness in the HR, uh, the HR field, and the future that we're trying to take for the individuals. And I get with the auto those things are a necessity. Maybe before we thought we can get around some of that, or we can just pile some of that paperwork on. But I've even noticed in myself how my mind has changed to what automation really means to the success when you become an entrepreneur. That's really, especially solopreneurs, that's really your tool. That's really your crown jewel. If you can automate and get them hands out that's doing things that you can't physically do, or you can do, but it's just so much that it bears to do. With that being the case, and us bring that on that corporate field, do you think there'll be a new to the capacity of which corporate now understands that, or have you seen that? Have you seen that corporate is really saying, okay, we got to make changes? And then when I'm saying corporate, I'm not talking about maybe the Fortune 500s, which are important companies. I'm talking about the Fortune 50s, the Fortune 100s, those big name companies, the Macy's, the Lockheed Martins, the Bowens, those kind of name brand companies, the banks, Bank of America, those kind of things. I noticed they've doing a lot of things with fees and rescinding those kind of things where they not charging you all of this for using ATM, taking out your money from your account. That sounds like a personal issue, but I go on with it.
Listen, we that's a huge. I'm glad you said that though, because personal does bleed into work. They're not separate.
Yeah,
There's been a lot of conversations about that. That's why you have to be empathetic. And I think it's a slower turn. I hear a lot of our corporate partners or the large organizations saying, it's a slow ship. It takes a long term to, time to turn, and I might catch some heat for this. But I have sat in some of those seats, and I'm sorry to say that sometimes that is a huge excuse. It is a barrier. It is something that people hide behind because they want to be performative. They don't want to give their employees transparent answers. And I was on my soapbox like, are you sure? Like the ship hasn't seemed to start to turn. You don't seem to want my ideas. So be honest with yourself and be honest with your employees. Don't just hide behind, well, it's going to take a while. Yes, of course, the larger the organization, the more checks and balances, red tape, sometimes bureaucracy. And sometimes those things are in there for very, very good reasons. I don't deny that, but be honest about it. And that's where part of the issue becomes. And I think we're seeing these organizations turn. I'm seeing a really interesting turn in the financial sector too. Lots more people getting on board with diversity, equity, inclusion, looking how their teams are built. I've been doing some cool work with one particular organization. And so I think, definitely leaning into that and understanding that the face of it does have to change. If you want to just sit comfortable, well, how are you going to attract people who want something different and they want to grow? And if you're just going to sit comfortable and hide behind your automation, you're never going to truly know what people think because you haven't heard the voice of the customer. And yes, your employees are your customers.
Yes, exactly. And as we talk about the employees or the customer, one thing and before I'll say one thing and then I'll point out Rob's other question. I remember because you mentioned in the conversation where if a hiccup happens and there's an emergency and an employee needs you to fix it right away, you're telling them wait 2 weeks. I remember years ago where HR, the human who was actually in the office with you, had not, I want to say responsibility, but had the ability to go into corporate funds because they had like a small stash, and that they were responsible for, and they were able to give you from those funds, and then when your money came in from whatever the hiccups were, that just comes back in that sense. So HR was able to do other things because the human could jump in and do some type of an element, or they can even make a phone call and get your check expedited. So instead of 2 weeks, literally it's the next morning you would have UPS come and they would hand deliver your stuff. Those were things that they were given that ability to say, okay, this is a goof, just fill this out, sign it in front of me, and I can fax it over, I can do all of this, and boom, your stuff has been expedited. And when we're automating so much, the automation itself, the programs itself, only have so much of a capability. And so if we're not allowing humans to learn from the past, because that's something else that I've noticed, people are so busy and ready to ditch history. And we already know what that saying is. If you don't understand history, you don't know it. You are doomed to repeat it. And that's exactly what we see, but from an expedited um, standpoint, where all those failures that used to happen before, instead of it taking its time because the human is doing it, now we have expedited the failures, and now we blame automation. So from that point, I think we need to really step back and say, how can we not remove the human element, not remove the power of the human, but allow the human to coexist with automation? So when they see something wrong, they can jump in. It's like we leave no space for that jump in point. So I think I would love a little discussion on that. But definitely, I wanted to touch on Rob's question: how can HR help guide the culture in an organization? Most issues are truly cultural issues, as in corrupt corporate culture, etc. And
Mhm.
I mean, they had a little discussion in there, but let's kick that off. Yeah, because I saw the conversation going on in the
I,
chat, but I wanted to get that question out
yes,
there.
that's a powerful question too, but that's how we know how Robert rolls. These are it's such a critical question, and especially for a small business who is or a new entrepreneur founder who's starting out, that can be like, I want to do this, but I don't even know where to start. So giving those tools, but it's a lot of stuff that we've already been talking about, and making sure that we are equipping people with those tools, and that we're asking the right questions, that we are centered on the humans, that we want to understand what the different factors are that make people want to stay or not want to stay. We don't want to understand, to Robert's point, what's not working, because I agree that most issues are really cultural, and it's bringing in things like diversity, equity, inclusion. If you have me in this place and you want me there because I'm a woman or because I'm a Black woman, but you don't treat me right once I'm there, that doesn't make me feel like I belong. It doesn't make me feel like I'm valued or appreciated. Then I join the Great Resignation because you don't appreciate me and you don't deserve me. And so you have to listen to folks. You have to do things for the right reasons. You have to want your teams to succeed and be there. And if you truly want that, then it's building the policies, the procedures, the systems, the tools that go along with that by listening to the voice of your employees and understanding what that is. Everything that we do, we can't just put something up on the website. We have to live out our values, because everything we do, our employees see that. And they're going to say, yeah, we have this up there, whether it's diversity, equity, inclusion, or yes, your ideas matter, all these things, but we don't actually practice that. well, now they think that you're a hypocrite or they don't believe you. And it's like, yeah, and they're going to talk bad about you. What do you think that's going to show up as employer branding? If they're talking about things on social media or they're writing a review on Glassdoor, people look at that when they're looking to find a different employer, and don't think that they're not going to jump into somebody's DMs on LinkedIn and get the true experience, because we know that things get painted over and all prettied up from a marketing perspective. They want the real grit, and they will check out your employees. So you better be branding yourself appropriately, both internally and externally. But it's really just getting at the root of what's, a lot of times we don't want to, we want to avoid confrontation. We don't want to know what's really going wrong, because then we got to fix it. No, get at what's going wrong too. And so to Robert's question, I think that is a huge gap that I'm seeing. We have to know the problems to fix them and to make people feel like they belong in the workplace and to create a true culture.
Here,
Yeah,
here.
that's you hit that you hit that on the head. The investigative research work has increased. I don't even want to put a number for it. It's I just say tenfold, hundredfold since then. People have been that naivety of, okay, corporate, I figure you're gonna figure it out and just gonna hang around in the balance. That's dead. They took that out and shot that down in the street. That is not moving anymore. People are doing this great investigative work on. I mean, and this is the simplest of thing. I shared a lot of times about that one guy that followed me for a year, and I wasn't offering no job, but he just was following my content to see if I was going to change my window of how I talked about things. He told me that, and so if they're doing it with the simplicity of watching your post and your interaction on social media, you best believe they're putting a little more intention as to where they want to go spend 8 to 10 to maybe 12 hours in some professions a day at an operation, a location, or a corporation. People are really doing their homework now, and with the fact of that, you've putting in these other things that are really becoming mantras of life now. Okay, my work life balance has to be before my paycheck. You spend time you off somebody. It's also my dad used to tickle me when I was younger. He say you always know who want the money. He said you can offer two people the jobs, and he said you can tell which kind of person they are. Offer one $20, and you offer the other one 15, but tell them they get to tell everybody what to do. He said, watch how many people take that $15. Because he said you have a lot of people want to tell everybody what to do. And he said you have far less people want to take that 20 and just go do the job. And I didn't think about nothing like that back then because I was a young kid with a first job. But I think of it now so much in my mindset. A lot of people just want that ability to tell somebody what to do or tell somebody where to be or how to be. And they're not incorporating that into this balance. But now people's got this balance. Oh, yo, I've been home 2 years homeschooling my kid. I got a nice little thing here where I work this much, I put in that time. Other than that, I feed Bobby, Joe, or whatever. And we go out and take our little walk, and I come back and I start back working. Right? Corporate can't compete with that. So what are you going to do with that? Are you going to do the hybrid? Now I got positions that I'm not going to mention my company, but they on the edge are like, okay, it's over. We don't need the hybrid. You guys got to come back in. So how are we working with those kind of aspects now? Because people are smarter, not necessarily job wise, but they're smarter taking on the things that they really wanted all the time. And they put a lot of things before that. Yeah, work from home for life. I'm with you, Felicia. That's the mic
She
drop right
put
there.
that
Yeah, put that on the stick. Matter of fact, let's start that on t-shirts right now. Work for life, work from home for life. That's a campaign. We can run
on
off
the sticker.
that.
Yes.
I love it. This is like this. Oh, all these comments they just breathe life into me. Oh goodness, so funny. It's true, and work from home is not for everybody, right? In every
Right.
company and every role, but some companies have just tried to bring people back too quickly, but they haven't even asked. Or I was having a conversation with a colleague last week, and they were like, well, they asked, but then and everybody was like, I would come in 2 to 3 times a week, but prefer 1 or 2 days off at home, not off, but at home. And the company was like, okay, everybody come on back. No messaging in between. And they're like, what? Again, why did you ask me? And the majority of us said this, and yet you did the opposite. That does not engender trust when we do that. And, I think, Charlene, you were talking before about HR's ability. And I remember those days when you could make that phone call and have the UPS come the next day for that check. And some companies still are making that happen, and some through automation. As an HR person, I struggle to even get to them. And even without automation, that is where, Robert asked about culture. How do you want to treat your people, including your internal stakeholders like HR? Sometimes I felt like I was treated poorly by other people in the organizations. Like, I'm just trying to help this employee out. And then because I'm the face, I'm the one that they see and interact with, and you're hiding behind these doors. That's another thing that makes HR look bad. And there has to be this empathy and understanding from employees too, to seek to understand, not just to like brand HR as the bad person, because you don't always see what goes on behind those other doors either. We have been in the struggle for years. And when I tell you that I am always the person that pushed, people didn't always like it, but the right thing will always be the right thing at the end of the day. And that is how you set culture. That is how you treat people appropriately. And if you do that, they will stay. And if they're having challenges, they will share that with you before they hit the door.
Yes, because I would say a lot of these leaders or founders, company owners, they are that wizard in the Wizard of Oz. HR is that big mouth scary machine in the front, and the curtain that is hiding the true people who are pulling the strings and yelling in the speaker, making you, and HR is like, oh, like you guys are the ones who are supposed to, I don't want to say scare us, but keep us in line. And so they can hide behind HR and not say, well, we're the ones who put these practices through, and HR is just our sounding board and our faces to you guys. So I love that you said that. So I want y'all to think of Wizard of Oz when you're thinking of your HR folks, and tell that same machine you want to know who behind that curtain. That's what you want to get at. If you, especially if you're upset, send a letter to the curtain and get your conversations there. But I want to make sure we get into this last question before we wrap up. And this was from Faith Based Workplace. Uh, since smaller companies make up America, and that's a fact, do you believe HR can change on the smaller side and create change in larger companies?
That is such a powerful question. And thank you for that, my friend, and for tuning in. I think definitely because these are the organizations that I support, both small to medium, but these small companies, do not sleep on them. They are making big shifts. They are thinking about things creatively and in an innovative way. And people might make the argument, well, they're smaller, they can do that. They don't. Well, there's also large organizations I've seen doing that too. Anybody can do this, but I love this question because we all have the ability to impact change. We all can do that. We can learn, large organizations learn from what these smaller organizations are doing because they are pouring into their people. They are making the time. They are shifting agendas to allow time for that empathy versus rushing into the agenda or checking in on people only when you want to know how their project's going. How about ask them how their life is going? Maybe they had a loved one in the hospital. Find out how that is. But absolutely, this ripple effect can come through small companies. Pay attention to what's going on out there so you don't find yourself on the other side of your employees being in the Great Resignation. Thank you for that question.
Scouts out. I like what we're gonna hop on. Send scouts out. I know that was a thing that I had talked to a lot of when I was doing a lot of my work in corporate. I was asking for scouts. Let's have people that check out other companies and how they're doing it, not for the mimic, not for the imitate, but to see what works and what can we implement pieces of that works with who we are. Be a little more creative with. I know this is how this rolls, but how does that roll for us? How does it roll for this company? How does it roll with the people that work here? And I think when we get off of that soapbox of trying to tie ourselves to this company and that company, in the essence of competition, let's see what that company is doing that's actually excelling that company for their workers, not for a bottom line that the CEOs can say, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to take this sellout money, or no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say sellout money, but I'm going to take this
Yes, you
compensation.
did. Say it. Say it.
Let's keep it
Say
honest.
it's about money. Take your pieces of silver and go.
I'm seeing CEOs. I'm seeing CEOs bounce around all of these companies, taking all these big packages. Like the CEO, somehow I was reading the CEO of this company left that company with a big separation package to go be the CEO of this company. So they didn't rob this company, and then now they taking over to this company, and they didn't left that company in disarray, but they took a whole lot of money and resources that they could have had to maybe fix some of their issues. So when I'm saying that, look across the board and say, okay, yo, they putting this diverse thing in, and they're really doing it like that. Let's see if we can implement that kind of thing or some kind of structure to that to our plan. That's what I mean by sending the scouts out. Have someone in that capacity to say, I'm going to eyeball and see what they're doing. And I'm going to see if that could come back over here and it can be implemented with us, our staff, our people, and our organization. So, and I did that DEA piece of segue to Will because Will has a phenomenal question. And Will, I didn't talk to you a little bit, bro. You could be over my DEI team, man.
Mine too. Come on over.
Yes, because I love that Will is really doing what a lot of people should be capable of doing. If you have
Mm-hmm.
a large team that is diverse, then start telling that, start giving their story to the higher ups that you
The
report
execs.
to, those
Yeah.
executives, and make sure that you're as frustrating as it can feel, but start chipping away at it. And I think that's what a lot of times we miss the mark on that. We think that one effort, one thing that we've done, or maybe six things that we've done should have broken down a whole entire wall. But we have to remember, especially these organizations have been around for years, decades, centuries. You're not chipping at that wall through six things or a year of work. Like that's not going nowhere. That wall not going anywhere. So it's definitely a full effort that we need to always remember. We need a collaborative effort. We need a way to make it across the board that everybody has a buy-in and everybody's actively working to reform the way that not only HR is seen, but of course the policies that HR has to push through, because that's a large part of what HR is really doing. It's the policies. And if we're not addressing the policies, then what's the point? You can yell at HR all day, but what's the first thing they'll say? I got to go with what the policy says. We have to really make sure that we understand why we're upset, why we're frustrated, and what are we frustrated at. And then that's what we need to start fighting against is the policies.
Yeah, help shape them and shift them. Because even as HR, I'm not saying bend all the rules, but policies are meant to be hopefully flexible if we're using them to move into the future of work. They're not to block people or to be a barrier. And that's a common misconception too.
Yes,
Yeah, it
yes.
definitely is.
So
It's definitely.
as we coming up on that hour, if this is good, so you know what I already say. We need a part two. And I
You're
think
welcome.
we need a definite part two before the year is out, because this is something that everybody is struggling with. And especially if you're trying to say, you know what, I'm leaving corporate, I'm gonna start my own company. The last thing you want to
Mhm.
do is take those same failed experiences, because of course, as a solopreneur, as a startup, you're scrambling. You don't have anything in place for conversation of HR related. You're not if somebody's not performing well, you didn't have a conversation with them. You just told them bye. Like no, that's not good either on a small scale. So things like that you need to be aware of. And so you need to look at what does work. What are good policies that you can take with you, work on and build in your own venture? And then what policies didn't work and how can you make something different or tweak something so you can make it better and implement that in your own company. So I don't want you guys to leave here and do any failed ventures and then now people talking about you like a dog on LinkedIn.
We definitely don't want that.
No, no. So we've been showcasing Tiffany's information and connections. And before we
Yes.
leave, I definitely want you to talk about this diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging series that we've been showing
Ooh,
folks. And Carl will be dropping the link in the chat.
ooh. That's power right there, y'all. That's power right there.
Thank you. Yes, Carl Shawn has been a uh, community member for a bit now and contributing. So we started, Suman Kapoor and I, my collaborative partner, we started this venture on June 11th of 2020 after the George Floyd murder as a way to open up space to have this empathy for folks who might be going into the workplace while people are, blazing into agendas and they just been crying before work, to allow that space for people to process and share and learn. So anyone is welcome to join us any Friday. We meet 12 to 1 Eastern time. And it's really is a great community. People share resources and wins, and we work through challenges together. So it's just a great space and it just fills me up. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share that.
Ah,
Of course. And
that wasn't the half of it. That wasn't the half of it. You guys gotta come. This is a must. This is a must see. The NBC don't have anything on this room right here. This conversation on Friday. I was so hurt. I was so hurt on Friday. I was hurting that I was hurt. I was on the beach at 12 this past Friday, so I really wasn't hurt. But I was hurt. But I was down there and I couldn't get no connection because I definitely had my phone trying to get that Wi-Fi working. It wasn't kicking up nothing on the beach, so I just had to suffer it to be so. But I'd love to be part of those conversations, guys. We talk about it all, and it is definitely a safe space. We don't go out to and everybody don't have a powwow and get to telling everybody what went on in there. We keep that safe and confidential. Tiffany and Suman as well. Phenomenal people, phenomenal heart. They put that room together, and it is diverse. When we say diverse, it's diverse. It ain't two or three of us, and we dominate. It's like, and you'd be surprised how those that don't look like us, we have more of them in there discussing and trying to understand some things that they not really understanding, and they want to do the work to understand. They don't want to
yeah.
come ask us all the questions and think that we got the playbook on. They want to come and find out what they can do, how they can get involved, how they can change their thinking, how they can change those that they're friends with to think differently. It is a beautiful thing. So you guys, if you're not doing it, I dropped it in there. Check in with Tiff, check in with Suman Kapoor as well, and come in on Fridays at 12 to 1. You put that sandwich down and come and get
Bring
some
your sandwich
nourishment.
too.
You could bring
Yeah,
your sandwich.
no,
Right,
Come
no,
it's
I
on
mean,
now.
casual. Come
no,
as you
I'm just
are.
saying for the
You
nourishment
always
part.
trying
Come
to
and get
starve
some of that.
somebody. You always trying to
Come,
starve somebody.
no, come and get that mental nourishment, man. We've been picking up sandwiches the whole pandemic.
You
Just
can
let
you
them.
can eat and learn. You can because I've joined a couple of times, and I'll say there's a couple of things that, especially if you're not sure how to join into the conversation, you can listen, and that's a great way to.
Yes,
That's how I like to
yeah,
start. If I'm new to
yeah,
something, I want to hear what's happening, and you can still
yeah.
be supportive by listening, by being there, supporting in the chat, and then if you have
Great
something
point.
to contribute, you're always welcome. So I would say the space is very welcoming. It
Yes,
honors everyone who is in attendance, and it gives you not only a voice, but it allows you to learn. So I do thank you so much for creating a space like that.
Thank you, Charlene. And I didn't mean to leave you out with your sandwich or whatever else.
no,
I appreciate it. Yes, because she has been dropping some fire too when she's able to join. Thank you. We're all about inclusivity. So I'm going to own up to the fact that I didn't share that you've been joining us too.
yeah.
No worries, no
It's
worries.
been yeah. Yeah. Then I guess somebody was hungry. I didn't want to take away their lunch hour. I just mean on the mental, because sometimes we feed the body tremendously all the time, and in feeding
Yeah,
the mental,
yeah.
we most of the time, 90% of us all the time, we feed the mental toward things that we're doing and we have to do. Sometimes it's good to feed the mental toward things you have no clue about. Get some understanding about how other things are ran besides your circle that you run in. So that's what I mean by that. So now go get your sandwiches and just be there at 12.
And on that note, we're gonna say thank you all for coming through.
Thanks, Tev. Thanks,
Catch us
y'all.
catch us on Thursday for another episode and another group of great conversations that we're going to be having. And of course, check us out on Friday for creative, no, credible vulnerability moments. I'm thinking about another show that Carl and I need to be working on. Hello, hello. But okay.
Yeah.
So with all that
Yeah.
said, thank you all for coming through, and y'all came
Thank
through
everybody
as
for tuning in.
gangbusters. The conversation was great, and we look forward to doing it again on Thursday. Bye, y'all.
Absolutely. See
Y'all.
y'all. Have a great
Bye.
one, guys.
Talk with Carl and Charlene. Real talk for the real world.